Hello students, welcome back to another session of EPG Padashala. I am Dr. Devaraj, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Khaladi. Today we are going to discuss about the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata in the subject of Indian religion and philosophy. And at the very outset, the learning objectives of this topic is that the scriptural literature of Hindu tradition, the Shrutis and Smritis, and the Ramayana and Mahabharata, the great epics of Indian thought, social and ethical aspect of Ramayana and metaphysical aspect of Mahabharata, and also the political and ethical aspect of both Ramayana and Mahabharata. At the very introduction, we can say that the Hindu scriptural literature is so vast and comprehensive, and that there is no branch of knowledge left uninvestigated by the great thinkers of India. The entire literature can be classified into two groups, that Shrutis and Smritis. Shrutis are defined as the God-revealed text, and Smritis are defined as the man-created or man-composed text. The Shrutis are commonly called as Vedas, and almost all religions these type of Smritis are. These are the intuitive knowledge imbibed by the realized saints. For example, in Islamic religion we can see Quran as a revealed text, and in Indian literature we can see that Vedas are considered as the Shrutis. And apart from these Shrutis, we have a number of Smritis. Smritis are namely they are dealing with the eternal principle and their practical application to this external principle according to the changing times. And Smritis are consist of Dharma Shastras, Puranas, and Agamas, and the Darshanas. And in the Dharma Shastras we can see so many Dharma Shastras, for example, in the form of Smritis. For example, it is Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, and also this Parashara Smritis. And these Idihasas are also considered as the part of the Smritis. And the great Idihasas or the epics are Mahabharata and Ramayana. And we are having also a Puranas in the form of Smritis. Altogether there are 18 major Puranas and also 18 Upa-Puranas also. And also we have the Agama or the manual of the worship. There are so many Agama Shastras also. Apart from this, there are so many darshanas. It is composed by human beings. It is also considered as the Smritis. And there are 6 major darshanas. They are called as Shad Darshanas. And some scholars, especially Madhvacharya, mentioned about 14 such darshanas in his Sarva Darshana Sangraha. And the Puranas and Idihasa in the form of stories and narratives with the historic touch behind them, which not only impress the reader but also expound the philosophical truth in such a lucid style that a sincere spiritual aspirant will get a spontaneous urge from within to live and the ideals in his own life. It gives so much improvisation in these Idihasas that the main intentions of this improvisation is to give a touch to the common people, to the eternal truths. They help us to grow bhakti and jnana, and finally it leads to realization. Now we will come to the Idihasas and or the epics. Idihasa literally means Idi or Hasa, or otherwise it is called It So Happened. The Ramayana and Mahabharata are the two great Idihasas or epics of Indian tradition. They deal with moral, domestic, social and political aspect in their fullest perfection. And both these Mahabharata and Ramayana is considered as the largest epic in the world. The Ramayana inculcates within its body almost all the moral ideals which may be connected with human life and all its personal, domestic, social, political aspects in their fullest perfection. Here, ethical perspectives and ideals are not talked separately, but they are intertwined with the flow of the stories itself in all its steps. On the other hand, in Mahabharata, it deals with the moral perspectives separately, also in the form of moral counsels of Bhishma, Yudhishthira and Krishna. Gita in Gita, one of the part of the major part of Mahabharata, which is a part of Mahabharata, may be treated as a treatise on ethics itself. Along with the educated section of the people, or uneducated group were also familiar to these great epics or idihasas. Hence, directly or indirectly, they have permeated into the national consciousness from the highest classes to the lowest Indians. While the Vedas are very sophisticated, abstract, and it is very complicated, the Ramayana and Mahabharata form a popular Veda and provides them simplest and most graphic introduction to Indian thought and culture. It is very simple in style and also in the expression, and every human being, every common man can also grasp its truth and grasp its eternal truth. Now we will come to the Ramayana portion. Ramayana is regarded as the first poetical work, or it is often called as Adi Kavyam, of purely human origin in the literature of India. And it's a traditional author, Valmiki, as the first Indian poet or Adi Kavi. He is called like because Valmiki is the first Indian poet, first Indian poet who composed a poem or sloga. Before Valmiki, there are only mantras, and that is why Valmiki is considered as the first poet in Indian literature, and he is called as Valmiki or Adi Kavi. And Valmiki himself says, Sankalpika Artha Pradam Adi Kavyam. That means everything is in it, which means that with whatever Sankalpa which teach this book, you will get the fullest meaning of that perception. The word Ramayana is a combination of Ram and Ayan, which means going of Rama or the travels of Ramayana. The Ramayana consists of 24,000 verses in 7 cantos divided into 500 songs. And the 7 cantons are Balagandam, Ayodhya Kandam, Aranyakandam, Kishkinda Kandam, Sundara Kandam, Yuddha Kandam, and Uttara Kandam. It has been translated into most of the Indian as well as several foreign languages, including Russian. Among the many versions of Ramayana, the most important original Sanskrit version and the Tamil version of Kambar. Equally important as Ramacharita Manasas, which is in a Hindi version of Ramayana written by Tulasidas. Tulasidas looks upon Sri Rama as a supreme incarnation of the divine being, born for the salvation of mankind. Other notable translations are the Kannada poet of Narahari Kavi's Tavare's Ramayana and Tunjathu Ramanujan Ezhuthachan's Adhyatma Ramayanam Kilipat in Malayalam literature. It is an interesting story centering around the incarnation of Vishnu as Rama, the prince of Kausala, or it is the capital of Ayodhya, believed to have happened in Tretayugam and his queen of Sita. In Indian mythology, we have 4 yugas: Treta Krita Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and also Kali Yuga. These stories happened in Treta Yuga, and it is the Rama is the incarnation of Vishnu. In Dwapara Yuga, we can see the incarnation of Vishnu as Sri Krishna. And every yuga, this such incarnation is coming. This is the story, this is the mythological background of this story. And it instructs the humanity how to lead a fruitful life, attain Purusharthas. And when we are coming to the social aspect of Ramayana, we can see that it represents the true Hindu spirit of unconditional adherence to the law of righteousness and the performance of one's own duty, one's own prescribed duty. To assert the greatness of life, of activity based on the righteousness underlying the law of divine being is one of the main aims of Ramayana. According to the work, Dharma is the soul of life. Sri Rama represents in himself as an ideal son, the ideal brother, the ideal husband, and the above all ideal king. Though the characters in it, the Ramayana teaches man how he can fulfill the demands of dharma. Social life and spiritual life are wonderfully harmonized. In every aspect and every corner we can see Ramayana. In every way we can read Ramayana, we can interpret it like that. We can see different aspect of every individual in Ramayana. Rama as a son, Rama as a father, Rama as a husband, Rama as a king, and Rama as a brother. How this aspect he fulfilling his duties as this different station in life. And Ramayana we can see bhakti, yoga, karma, jnana are fused into it. And we can see that the social life and spiritual life is beautifully harmonized in the Ramayana. Sri Rama's, when we are looking into the social aspect of Ramayana, Sri Rama's government is a specimen of an ideal entrepreneurship. This ideal is inspired by Gandhi for his concept of Ramarajya, and Gandhi derived the concept of Ramarajya from the idea of Rama's kingdom. And the ideal organization of Ramarajya has been providing constant inspiration to Indian political thought from the period of Ramayana till the present. Till now we are discussions is going on about the concept of Ramarajya. And the present concept of village republic is a remote modifications of the concept of Ramarajya. And when we are coming to the metaphysical aspect of Ramayana, we can see that Ramayana portrays the victory of Dharma and final defeat of Adharma. And in Rama and Sita, we behold the embodiment of Brahman is in his dual aspect, the unmanifest and the manifest. Rama is an embodiment of all the eyes, especially the virtuous and the truthfulness. His extreme devotion to truth is to be understood in the light of the characteristic Hindu belief, that is, this quality by which God himself is chiefly known. God is truth. The man who loves truth must therefore in the end love of God. Ramayana suggests that through one-pointed devotion to God, one can get over the influence of Maya and attain the goal of merging oneself in Paramatma. Here is a very beautiful picture of Ramayana. This picture includes this is a meaningful picture. In worldly life, whatever might be the spiritual progress one has to be achieved, he will never attain moksha unless he is detached from all worldly ties. This aspect is fully depicted the ascetic march of Sri Rama. This is the ascetic march. The meaning of this ascetic march is that Sri Rama was in front of the picture, Sita is in the middle and Lakshmana at the back. While on their march, because of Sita's presence in the middle, Lakshmana could not see his brother properly, and at frequent intervals he used to request his sister-in-law to make room for him to see Rama. In this context, Sri Rama is to be compared to Paramatman and Lakshmana to the individual soul Jivatman. Jivatma is constantly endeavors to attain oneness with Paramatman, but Maya, here it is Sita, stands in the way with an intervention, yearning its possibility to get rid of Maya, to attain goal of merging oneself with Paramatman. The artist who pictured this incident is very beautifully depicted this metaphysical aspect. Another metaphysical aspect in Ramayana is very beautifully illustrated in Yoga Vasishtha. Yoga Vasishtha is the derivative of Ramayana, and also we can see the traces of the metaphysical aspect of Ramayana in the Yoga Vasishtha. In this poem, sage Vasishtha, the chief priest of King Dasharatha, is instructing Sri Rama about the unchangeable reality through many interesting stories. Here, sage Vasishtha is become a moral teacher to Rama. Rama, while he was young, had a feeling of detachment from the world, and he brooded on the fate of human beings. Vasishtha, through this poem, convinced Sri Rama that by right thinking and diligent discrimination will attain to the truth of Brahman. The study of Ramayana will be useful guide to the true aspirant in treading the path of spirituality, leading to complete emancipation from the cycles of birth and death. This great work has under its possession a unique moral and spiritual treasure capable of inspiring the whole human race. It provides the right solution for almost all human problems and miseries. We regard Ramayana as the heart and soul of India. Before concluding this this discussion on Ramayana, we can see that all the 24,000 slogas of Ramayana are the amplifications of the 24 letters of the famous Gayatri Mantra of Rig Veda. And we are coming to the next topic, Mahabharata, epic Mahabharata. The Mahabharata has the honor of being the largest epic in the world with 1 lakh slogas. Hence it is called Sadas Sahasri. It is the monumental work of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana or Badarayana Vyasa, commonly known as Veda Vyasa, because he has the person who first collected and codified the Vedas. And scholars sometimes says that Mahabharata is the biggest epic in the world. It is when it is compared to the Western classics of Greek mythology, namely Iliad and Odyssey of Homer, it is 8 times bigger than the Iliad and Odyssey it put together. That is the clearly states the longest or the vastness of the Mahabharata. It has 1 lakh slogas, consist of 18 sections or parvas. It considered the 5th Veda, and Bhagavad Gita forms the part of which comes under Bhishma Parva. By composing this great epic, he brought religion and the value system more closely to the common people, as it was enough to know the highest truth given to the Vedas. And Mahabharata, many scholars consider Mahabharata as the 5th Veda of Indian tradition. The 18 Parvas are Adi Parvam, Sabha Parvam, Aranya Parvam, Virada Parvam, Udyoga Parvam, Bhishma Parvam, Drona Parvam, Karna Parvam, Shalya Parvam, Saubadiga Parvam, Stri Parvam, Shanti Parvam, Anusana Parvam, Ashwamedha Parvam, Ashramavasa Parvam, and Mausala Parvam, and Mahaprasthana Parvam, and Sorga Parvam. Through the core event of this epic is the great battle between great battle of Kurukshetra between Pandavas and Kauravas. There are hundreds of other major stories also linked with it. It deals with almost all subject in it. Hence it is given as Yada Hasti Tadanyatra Yane Hasti Na Kutra Chit. That this slok means that that which herein called can be seen elsewhere, but that which is not herein cannot seen anywhere else. That means everything is in it. Nothing is left uninvestigated or untold by the author of Mahabharata. The guiding spirit through the epic of Lord Krishna and its central theme is Yat Dharmas Tadojaya. Its underlying theme concerns moral duty and right conduct. When we come to the ethical aspect of Mahabharata, we can see that Mahabharata, in the central teaching of Mahabharata, is condensed in Bhagavad Gita. And the Mahabharata deals with moral perspectives in the form of moral counsels from Bhishma, Vidura, and Lord Krishna, etc. Bhagavad Gita is considered as a treatise in ethics itself. According to Mahabharata, the primary aim of moral conduct is social welfare, and it propounded the internal conception of the reality. And the basic philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is that ideal of Nishkama Karma. This ideal leads us to the ideal of Nishkama Karma, and it leads to the attainment of liberation. Ethics of Bhagavad Gita may be shortly described as an advice to practice of Nishkama Karma and Sudharma. And the former means passionless action, and the later means one's duty in accordance with one's own station in life as determined by one's own Varnashrama Dharma. Bhagavad Gita holds that God's realization is the ultimate end. It is the sole end of all actions. It has preached the Dharma of Varnashrama, but the fulfillment of Dharma becomes a duty because it has been ordained by God. The daily duties also have been ordained by God. The daily duties also have been elaborately discussed in Bhagavad Gita, according to which every man has some determined action to perform. He can achieve his ultimate end and also the social end by performing and determining actions. The ethics of Gita synthesize both social and individual interest. The ultimate end is absolute perfection of individual, but this perfection can be attained only through consolidation of society and God realization. According to Gita, the only way of freeing the soul from the various limitations is social service and devotion to God. This attainable through knowledge, devotion and action. In Bhagavad Gita, we can see a beautiful synthesis of action, devotion and knowledge. There are so many interpretations in Bhagavad Gita. Some people highlighted the knowledge portion, other people highlighted the devotional portion, and some other people highlighted the karma or action portion. Anyhow, we can see in Bhagavad Gita all the three aspects of human life, that means feeling, willing and emotion, are beautifully synthesized. And those who attain the stage of these three states are called as Sthita Prajna. And when those persons who are highlighted the knowledge portion believed that by knowledge can itself, the most sinful person can cross over the ocean of samsara by knowledge itself. And that way we can also attain liberation by devotion and also by action. Anyhow, in Bhagavad Gita, we can see a beautiful synthesis of action, devotion and knowledge. That means karma, bhakti and jnana. The scholars like Shankaracharya is highlighted the knowledge portion of Bhagavad Gita. And this can very, this aspect can articulated in the translation of or commentary of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan is beautifully seen in the commentary of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. And the Gita provides a detailed consideration of all these three paths. It provides a harmonious blend of external action and internal peace, activism and renunciation, involvement and detachment, knowledge and devotion, and individual is free and society with solidarity. Here we can see a beautiful synthesis of all the three ways of liberation. And this, the most important teaching of Bhagavad Gita is the devotion of one's own duties in the society. And it holds that the establishment of social harmony is a must and man has to follow it without attachment. Here in Bhagavad Gita we can see the discrimination of the philosophy of action and philosophy of inaction. Here the philosophy of inaction does not mean the action, does not mean the detachment of action, but detachment in action. Bhagavad Gita always prefer detachment in action, not detachment of action. And this highlighted the karma portion of Bhagavad Gita. It holds that the establishment of social harmony is the must and man has to follow it without attachment. It highlights the importance of selfless service to the benefit of the entire cosmos. Thus, it preaches the message of Loka Sangraha, or the welfare of all, and this message of Gita is universally comprehensive and worldly accepted. And the Loka Sangraha is the central principle of Bhagavad Gita. That means those who are attained liberation is work for the liberation of the entire humanity. He never runs away from the society. He must continue in the society in order to lift the entire people. And now we will come to the political aspect of Bhagavad Gita. We can see that according to the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata, Vishnu first created the monumental text on life and administration, and then established a king, government and state. This implies that power should not be used as a means by the state. This implies that power should not be used as a means of the state. Instead, the state should be considered as the means whereby power is concretized to as and help in the maintenance of the social organization. We can understand from this that from the very ancient times to the present day, the state has been means to public welfare in India. According to Mahabharata, the duty of the state is to establish Varnashrama system. The state should create such an organization in which every individual should be able to perform the duties appropriate to his station and stages of life. The king's duty is to promote the welfare of the populace. It supports the theory of welfare state and it insists that the state must create conditions which are conducive to the achievement of the value dharma, artha and kama. In Mahabharata, we can see the harmonious relationship between different classes have been considered as the important for political organization. This text supports the theory of welfare state because its objective is security and happiness, and the people have been directed to show patriotism to the state. The state must create conditions which are conducive to the achievement of the values artha, dharma and kama, and finally leads to moksha. Although wars appear frequently in Mahabharata or other texts, these wars are considered as religious wars, which were characterized by the observance of certain moral rules. And some scholars very beautifully picturized this as the internal war in every individuals and not this external war. In war, according to Vyasa, is only a dramatic improvisation. It is only an improvisation for making the moral lesson more easily to the public. We can see that Mahabharata, though it deals with the selfishness of princes, wars and threats of wars, it ends with an invocation of the peace. Finally, it leads to a peace or tranquility of every individual, tranquility of mind of every individual. It does not encourage, it never encourages war, but it portrays its fertility, showing the amount of bloodshed and destructions it brings about, says Gandhi. And for the modern Hindus, the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita in particular is one of the most authoritative scriptures of Indian tradition. The teachings of great epics, as we have discussed above, are a vital source of inspiration in confronting the ethical, political, social and religious dilemma of us. There are so many great persons who are influenced by the teachings of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Mahatma Gandhi remarks that Gita is the universal mother whose door is wide open to all who knocks on it. And likewise, so many great personalities are often read and they are highly inspired by the teachings of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. Though these two great epics are considered as Idihasa or Purana or Idihasa or epics, we can see that there are so many insights, so many inspirational advices to every human persons to this, and that is why both these texts are the messages of both these texts are perennial and eternal, and it nurture those who are reading this time. They can inculcate so many moral ideals from these lessons. Hope these lessons are enjoyed by you. Thank you.